showed the tutorial on turning UEFI off on different models of computers. So obviously, yeah. Let's go ahead and move on because I need something that's a bit more uplifting than thinking about all the bad things my USB device can do to me. Instead, let's go ahead and talk about snooping. Now, the NSA, as we all know, has been getting into trouble for snooping. The FBI is in hot water for dirtboxing, and the DOJ is in trouble for gagging. As for the CIA, they've decided to go a different route. Rather than risking all those legal entanglements, they've decided that the data and communication snooping isn't worth the fuss if you could get all the same information off of social media. Now, the CIA's venture capital firm that's in QTEL has invested in 4 companies that mine social media and public surveillance data. Those companies are Dataminer, Geophedia, Pathar, and Transvoyant. Now, each of those provide tools to mine platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the like. And now these firms have received investments and an encouraging hand pushing them into developing those tools into resources for the CIA's newly established Directorate of Digital Innovations, which is focused on partnerships with the private sector. Now, Chibert, looking at the tools that will be available to the CIA and looking at what they could possibly do with them, it's actually a very impressive array of human intelligence. Let's go down the services. Dataminer, which is this first one that you see here, it uses the a Twitter stream to map and visualize trends. Now, right now, it's being used by law enforcement, hedge funds managers, advertisers, and PR firms. But the CIA is thinking that they could use it to find out when there's a certain resentment or when there's a building movement to protest. The next one down is Geophedia, and Geophedia uses geotagged social media messages from Twitter and Instagram, among others. It monitors regions for breaking news events in real time. So it's been used by news organizations, but it can also be used to track protests and activist activities by both law enforcement, and one of the biggest customers have been corporations looking for anti-product sentiment. The next one down is Pathar. Now, they've got a product called Dunami, which mines Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to create a network of associations. It's the whole who is whom connected to and what networks do they belong to. It can track, they claim, radicalization. You get to see this sort of trend when people start getting more and more angry about a particular thing. It's used by the FBI, and the CIA wants to use it to track global sentiment across different countries. Now, the last one, the last company that they invested in is called Transvoyant. It monitors Twitter, and it uses surveillance assets from the U.S. military. They look for what they're calling gang incidents that could indicate threats to journalists and resources overseas. And it's been integrated with data from U.S. military satellites, radar, aircraft, and drones to sort of give the big picture. Now, Transvoyant, of the 4, is the most secretive about what they do. They don't talk to people about what services they offer, but the little peek that we've had inside shows an incredibly interesting big data analytic engine. Lou, let me throw this over to you first, because this is actually something that Microsoft is good at, big data analysis. Give me what you think is going on based on the information that people are putting out there. Do you think that you can really do away with most of the legally and ethically questionable mining of private secure data just by looking at the information that people publicly and voluntarily put on the internet?
I think that there are many companies out there, including Microsoft, that will be able to try to use the data that are coming from social networks, be able to mine them and be able to use it in a way where they can generate and sentiment analysis and other things based off of that, and use it for bigger and better things to aggregate it and consume it against other pieces of data they already have about customers and other things. So I think that that's where the key lies is, yeah, you can get some things out of social networks publicly, but you can't necessarily get everything. So in order to get everything, you need to kind of put it with something else that you might have. So banks might, it happens like customer service agencies, like for instance, Comcast might have all of their customers and all of their back history and all of their data, but again, they supplement that with, what's going on and how people feel with social networking, and by data mining that data. So, it really all depends. There's a bunch of companies popping up all over the place, which are these kind of like integrator and kind of workflow type companies where they'll allow you to connect up Twitter, Facebook, all these different feeds to other backends, and then have different layers in between, like sentiment analysis and other modeling-based machine learning type things in between before it actually inputs it into your backend. And they're popping up all over the place. There's a bunch of them, and some, they're just based off of how much data is coming through. And they're popping up because people want to supplement their data with a social networking. So I think it's all dependent. It's all dependent on what you have on either side.
I don't want to make it sound as if this is nefarious, because these companies actually do provide a perfectly legitimate service that is used by major corporations around the world to do legal things. And the legal things is to gather sentiment. Where should I be pushing my products? Where should I be pushing my product line? The addition of the CIA does make it sound a little sketchy, but Chibert, and this is what I want to throw to you. This is not like some of the other privacy stories that we've covered on Twiat, where we're looking at something that maybe the U.S. government is doing that doesn't sound right, or it sounds as if they're overreaching, or it sounds that they're trying to get data that they shouldn't get a hold of. This is analyzing stuff that you, the user, has already put on the internet for everyone to see. They're not climbing in the back door. They're not looking into a storage space that they shouldn't be in. They're checking your Twitter account. Does that make it all okay?
Well, you're throwing things out into the public. You should expect people to harvest it in some way. But I'm going to put this in perspective. For those of you that have a clearance with the U.S. government, there are 2 different museums at the Central Intelligence Agency in Langley, Virginia. One is where the public can go, and that's where they sell the nice souvenirs and so forth. But there is one that you can only go into if you have a clearance. In there are some of the original personal identification, personal information cards that the Stasi in East Germany collected on their population. It's basically a 4x5 index card, and it's just written notes that they've collected about connections between people, what they're doing, what kinds of things they're doing, who they're talking to, and so forth, to support a fascist government. Now, stop and think. These companies are taking that to a whole new level. This is something that if it had existed in the early 50s, 60s, and so forth, I'm not sure we would have won the Cold War. So this is George Orwell, 1984. This is very much what George Orwell predicted. It is a, I would say, let's be cautious about these things. And to the people out there, I say this. If it is not a piece of information that you could stand at a street corner and yell at the top of your lungs, for God's sakes, don't put it on social media. It is public. Come on, people.
Yeah, and for me, that's the thing. If you put it on the internet, it's kind of your fault if people are using it to track you, is it not? I mean, Lou, let me get your opinion on that, because it's very easy to scream and shout when we think our privacy is being invaded. But if I tell someone, maybe you shouldn't put that on social media, they look at me like I'm an alien. Because, of course, you put it on social media. I need to put every meal I have on social media. I should put every waking moment on Instagram so that people know how witty and wonderful my life is. But when that leads to now they know what you like and what you don't like and what you do every single day and what your routine looks like, then they start saying, oh, my privacy is being invaded. That just doesn't seem right.
This doesn't seem right, but that's what companies do, right? I mean, they'll look for any avenue they can possibly do. I mean, social networking is one of them. It doesn't matter. It could be even services that are not necessarily open. They're ones that you still have to join. But again, think of this like this. There's been many services around the world that use things like email tracking tokens and so on. And when you open your email, it asks to download something like an image, and then they know when you read your email, right? And they know when you click on links, and then because those links are through a forwarding service, and they know what time of day you open your email now, right? Or what types of email you read, and all these, they can collect all these types of things. based off of your actions. And so you just have to be careful no matter what you do. If you have to be careful in your email, you have to be careful on social networking. I mean, any type of data that's able to kind of float around the internet is kind of open to interpretation, right? So I think, like Chibert said, I mean, to me, again, it's that whole idea of security, that concept that I've kind of attested to is assume breach. Just know that everyone has your data now, and now you just have to be mindful and meaningful and just watch for particular things. Like for me, I just have social security watching services and stuff like that just to make sure nobody's using it. But, other than that, what I post is open, and what I email is not really like, super secret, right? So I think these types of things you just have to be mindful going forward, is these services are not necessarily going to be, secured.
Gentlemen, thank you for a fun discussion. We'll have you back in just a bit. Now, coming up, we're going to be speaking with Adam Laub from Stealth Bits. If you thought ransomware was a problem before, you're going to want to watch in just a bit. But first, let's go ahead and thank the sponsor of the Twilight Right.